Hi everyone, it's Maria from Jardin Le Papier. I'm here to do a quick flip through of a Beachcomber book 2. They were very popular, so I'm trying to accommodate those who have asked for one, slowly but surely, since my mom's about to move. But I might have to pack up soon. So anyway, the book is 6 inches wide by about 8.5 inches tall, and I've built the spine of this 1904 book to be about 2 inches. Just added some fabric and sewed down the spine. And then for those of you that are new to my channel, I do traditional bookbinding, so I sew each individual leaf or folded page, and then I give it a hollow spine just for flexibility. This is an art book, so I've given it some extra spine room, which you'll see. This is a paperweight, which you'll need, just because the pages do have extra thick center binding, and I didn't sew the garter just in case you need to keep it flexible. So we'll get right in. Again, it's an altered book from 1904. There is an optional kit which includes shells locally from Oregon and Washington, and some pieces of antique tile and glass from Greece. So they've been weathered by and polished by the GNC. We'll go through that, or I'll show it quickly. I might not do as much talking today, just so I could get through the flip through and video editing as quickly as possible. When you open it up, it actually does start with this hand waxed paper that I make into hand vellum. I did not glue down this photo, which is my all-time favorite, of this mother and son walking the beach. The handmade papers for the end papers, I did have to alter the end just a little bit to give it a little depth, but you could always move your photo to the right or place a pocket there. This here is actually antique ledger paper. I might have shown that in my Instagram feed. So you'll see this antique ledger from the late 1800s that I waxed and printed on. And then you might see some printmaking and or marker pen papers from Strathmore, and or Kazan, what brand is it? I forget right now. But most of the papers that I use are either antique French or Italian, and then art papers, usually by Strathmore. So these are the handmade papers that I use to bind or put together two papers, and to also reinforce the center to give it a little more space for your artwork when you close up the book. So you'll see that. Just because I knew whoever owns it, it is reserved right now, but whoever owns it might be placing her own artwork in there. A pocket here. Most of the artwork in here is original watercolor, and I've taken my images from a book called Fascinating Shells. This one just happens to be on an old sample of crane paper, so it worked beautifully with my watercolor and pencils. So a lot of this will be mixed media. I have not glued that down, so you could place your artwork anywhere or alter the order of the artwork or replace it with your own. Watercolor of some pebbles that I was saving and putting in my pockets, actually from Ruby Beach in the Olympic National Park here in Washington. A lot of the pages have stenciling. More waxed, more of my watercolor mixed media paper and artwork. And this is a nautilus, and I do put the names on the back or the front of each artwork. So you'll see that there. So it's a chambered nautilus on the front. One of my favorite Beachcomber photos that I've used before. Here's some actual pages from the original book from 1904. The story of art, and to me, everything we find on the beach and keep is art. I've made some sea glass sample, paint color samples to match some of the sea glass that I've placed in this optional kit I'll open that right now since I'm referencing it. On the cover here is actually a French card done in traditional print press method, so it's pretty thick. And it was an old Bugler cigarette paper tin. I'm not sure what year. But on the inside, I have your collection of your tent, olive shell, little miniature shells, some local clam shells from Washington, a little booklet of Japanese rice paper where you can actually draw and do your own artwork. I'll have a couple of samples in the book, but you could do multimedia art and sketching, even the different types of glues here. So that's in there. And then the duller stones are glass, sea glass from Greece, the Aegean Sea, and then some gems. And I try to document what each thing is in here. This is actually a gemstone called green fluorite, and there's a description there. I purchased that separate though from Etsy. A little white pencil, some more shells, your Greek tiles, and your little donut, your what do you call this? I forget what it's called. It's on my Instagram. Anyway, see, this is what happens when I talk too much, but that is optional. Oh, and that's where I get a lot of the color inspiration, trying to mimic some of these in watercolor. Vintage magazine pages from France. More of my glassine paper, just so that you can use these as pockets or build them as pockets. A little bit of instruction for sea glass collectors, when the best time is and where. Usually after a storm and usually rocky shores. And some vintage French linen, which you'll see as pockets later. More vintage or antique book pages. Some of these are from Roxy Creation, and the others are from Sarah at Petit Papier. Original book pages from my Shells book to give you inspiration of what you could sketch. Usually when I collect something, I try to sketch it. I haven't had time lately. My mom will be selling her house, and my dad just passed away, so I've been a little busy. I was caretaker for a while. Ocean Wave. These are the watercolors that actually crystallize, and I've used throughout the book. So I've placed the little dot samples in your little pockets here of the greens and blues. This is the same French linen fabric. Some of your art papers, Strathmore sketch and or printmaking, more watercolor in gray, more like a green gray. Original book pages, more sketch ideas. And this actually comes from my vintage Seashores book that Donna Morgan sent me. I love this, so I need to make a digital copy of that so I can replace that page. I made an abalone shell image to match the sample that I put in here. So here's a little description of the abalone shell. It's meant to be calming, soothing, and healing, and there are the colors. You can actually remove this, and if you get the optional collector's box, you could just place that in there so that your book doesn't get too bulky. But even with it in there, it's not too bad. And then I have these gemstone paper clips that I purchased specifically for the Beachcomber and sea glass collector. I think these might be agate. I'll have to look up what they are. But I love them. There'll be 5 of these clips specific to this book. Original gemstone pages from my vintage book from Donna. This one here, Rocks and Minerals. And then, of course, I love the rocks that you can find at the beach, too. An original artwork using my acrylic pens by Artex. This was black, and I think one of these colors here. But this is a marbled cone. A photo of one of my favorite, they're not beachcombers, but I love the beach, so one of my favorite happy images that I included in one of my last books. An envelope full of specimen cards. I don't think they're waxed, but of course the waxed ones you'll have to use your gel pens or felt markers maybe. And then a couple of these will not be waxed so that you can actually write on them. Put that envelope there that I made with another one of your gemstone paper clips. And then this is using the Artex acrylic marker. And it's on marker paper. And this is the Tint Olive, which comes in the kit. So I tried to follow, but you know, I'm still practicing myself. Waxed paper, my vellum, handmade vellum backed with some waxed coffee paper, parchment paper. And then this is my watercolor slash glossy accents of the glass, where sea glass typically comes from. Broken bottles that get lost off of ships during storms or when ships go down. Some of them have glossy accents, some do not. So basically, these old vintage glass bottles that have fallen into the sea will eventually break up and become the sea glass that we find. Depending on how old they are and what type they were, they might be glossy, but they might not be also. So sometimes these are the ones from Greece. Depending on their age, they won't yet be as shiny. So, but sea glass is still beautiful, dull or shiny. Another one of your gemstone paper clips here. And I actually have it attached to an antique French crochet ribbon that came from, I know, Mr. Cup, I think. A lot of us shop with him. I just got my package from him. Things from France are taking twice as long now, especially with these tariffs in place. A lot of people are not shipping to the US anymore. So my French products are now becoming dwindling down. So I only have a few books worth. Life at Sea book pages. These kind of remind me of the different jellyfish or sea anemones sometimes, depending on the shape that you find. Another original watercolor slash mixed media, because I use some glossy accents, watercolor. There might be a little bit of acrylic marker in there, pencil, and pen. And this is the South African turban. Waxed and coffee dyed parchment paper. These, were they German or Finnish or Dutch? I don't remember now. I've used them in several books. These cigarette cards. Looks like they're floating amongst the seaweed down in the ocean. And I made these pages with stitch work. I don't know if you could see it there, just so that you can make them into different specimen boxes or categories. So for each one, there's a gesso box, either for your sketch or your details, depending on what you use, you know, what medium you use. You might not need the gesso background. Or you could cut up smaller specimen cards. I have a digital of that I think I'll try to make available for maybe $1 on Etsy or something. This is a mixed media shell called Zebra Volute, and I put it on half waxed paper, half, well actually it was originally this art paper, mixed media paper, and then I waxed half of it just to see what would happen to the paints. And it did kind of create the shiny effect. And then I layered it with some stitch work for the zebra stripes, and then a little piece of shell right there. So definitely abstract. and mixed media. Some of the French schoolwork paper, more of the handmade waxed paper that I made with some stenciling. Old book page. There's about 120 pages to this one, front and back. Italian. And then again, some of these stitched papers, which I got from Inky Fingers, coffee dyed and stitched. I like having the different specimens. This is watercolor with the glossy accents. This is a stamp from Singapore. This one is just a die cut where I backed it with your sample swatch, where you could document what this is. This is handmade paper that I made into one of the rocks that I had found along the beach. One of the agates. Now on the back you have your pockets again with the same vintage French. So this is where the book, even though it's got the hollow spine, the spine reinforcement that I built for each leaf is a little thicker. So you'll definitely want to massage these down or use the paperweight that I gave you that comes with the book. These are miniature Japanese paper origami made into little booklets. I did stitch them to reinforce them. You don't have to stitch them when you follow the origami instructions. And this one I glued this copper cover because I love the color of it. But this Japanese paper, like I mentioned, is actually good for calligraphy and artwork. So this is watercolor with a little glossy accents, just plain watercolor and pencil. This is acrylic over watercolor. Little glossy accents over my pencil, I believe, and maybe acrylic marker pencil of a sand dollar. Some of the rocks that I collected, and this was meant to be like an agate slash of a shell, a petrified shell. Didn't turn out very well, but that's okay. Mother Nature isn't perfect either, and that's a little starfish. So these will fit in the pockets. I did not put anything in the middle here just to not bulk up the spine too much, but these outer pockets definitely hold them. So there's two there. One blank one for you, double-sided. And then just some flags and spaces. You could gesso this here if you like, just like I did on the other specimen pages. You could create your big blocks or just put your artwork, your different artwork that you might sketch out. Put that there, and then a description back here or something. This is a little acrylic marker of one of the Greek tiles that's included in the kit. Not a color match, but you know, it is a way to document your collection. Gesso tiles, places for description. You could use your white gel pen to document on the coffee stain papers. This one here is kind of a fun one. There's a little first post office, I think, First American Post Office stamp, commemorative stamp right there. The potential owner of this will know the story behind that. And then I made these specimen cards with magnets, so they're actually floating on a page. The little magnets that come with my paint tin to hold my pans down, half pans down, actually worked well. This one is of a green anaconite gemstone or stone, and I'm not sure if I included one. I think it might be this one here. I'm a little off on the colors, but that's okay. And then on the back side is this blue apatite stone, gemstone. I tried to capture the blue, but it kept fading on me. I think because I used a mixed media paper maybe, and the watercolor didn't really turn out as I wanted. But that's what experimenting with watercolors is, the fun part. Old book page, you could gesso on that or sketch on that. I love my fine marker sketches on that one. This is another original mixed media, definitely, because you'll see my watercolors, you'll see the acrylic, some gold paint, white pencil, etc. This one is called a crowned veiler. Just on some vintage typing paper here. Just love how you could see my mistake of artwork on the back there. But this turquoise donut, that's what's included in that kit. But I just wanted to try to mimic the color using the eco dye, using your, what was it that I used last year, the different eco dyes that I made, and then some watercolor to complement it. It's a pendant that I actually purchased in Seattle, but I did not make it into a necklace yet. But you could do that. You could do whatever you like. And then some Dutch or Finnish, I don't remember now. Office work paper, French paper here. This one does fold out, so I included the full letter. So you have a lot of space for your artwork. Here are more of the squared areas for different types of specimens. I put this here as a sample. You could do your sketch here and then your description. This is a watercolor and mixed media of a shell. It's pretty rough, feeling just like the original shell was. But you could do something like that in the description there. So these are just meant to be examples, and then more boxes for your different specimens that you're collecting on your mini trips. My favorite gold and coffee stain paper from Inky Fingers. It reminds me of coral or beach lines, or even different jellyfish, depending if they wash up on shore like they did in Cannon Beach a couple months ago. A water or an ink, vintage ink sketch, pen and ink sketch I made using my dip ink calligraphy pens from, I think these came from Sarah, but this is actually gunmetal, so recycled gunmetal ink, the oil that comes from the gun metal, some vintage or antique ledger paper, and stamps from Sampool. And then this is me attempting to watercolor swatch all of the watercolor colors that I purchased from Masha's watercolors on Etsy. She has a kind that will crystallize, so you don't have to add salt or anything. And then I wanted to see how they would react to the coffee stained ledger paper that I have. So it did fade it out, just like a lot of our vintage books, vintage book pages. These are acrylic pen sketches that I just was playing with the other night on the marker paper. So you have so much room to do anything you want in this book. Some extra specimen cards that aren't waxed, so you could, well, this bottom one is waxed, as you can see, but the top two you can write on with your gel ink pens, jelly roll pens, or plain marker. Some more stenciling on some of the pages. These are watercolors and mixed media images that I wanted to have the same look with the different, sample and then sample or specimen description next to them. But they do move so that you could actually sample different images from the watercolor itself. And then on the back, you'll see the back of the watercolor so that you could sketch your own images and your own descriptions. So I put miniature specimen cards on them. And what it looks like is this here. So I just have these watercolors that I cut up into strips of the stones that I was seeing over in Ruby Beach in the Olympic National Park. So then I just cut them up to make them into strips. This one could actually be a bookmark probably. But I'm actually working on a lap book slash like a collector's box full of stones and shells, because I do have some left over. Another one of the gemstone paper clips. And then some papers from 1897 that you could sketch on. Of course, your coffee dyed ledger. And then on the back is a Fauna and Flora blank card. But I just love the blue of this, of the octopus. And then there's the end paper here. So that's the end. I did, again, alter the spine, covered the portion of the book, and it's stitched down. So it's not just glued, but it's also stitched to the spine, so that won't come apart. So there are your 5 clips and 2 different gemstones. It does close comfortably right now, assuming that you don't fill it too much more. But if it does, just use your adjustable garter strap and your paperweight. So that is it for today. Super fast. Just wanted to let the person get a sneak peek and decide if it's available. If not, I'll be reaching out to the person in line behind her. Again, I'll be packing up and moving, trying to sell my mom's house, so I'm not sure how many projects I can get done before the end of the year or early next year, but I'll try to keep up with my artwork. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.